The White House's plan to impose tariffs on Canada and Mexico is on hold, at least for now. But that hold is only set to last for 30 days. So the big question is what happens after that and how could it impact you? David McGarry is a research director with the Taxpayers Protection Alliance. He is up late with me tonight. Great to see you, David.
Thank you so much for having me. Great to be here.
So this hold is temporary. You have imposed these tariffs. Why is that?
Well, I'll tell you, it's a little bit difficult to understand precisely what's going on because the White House has been sending mixed messages. And it's also not entirely clear what the meaningful concessions were that were supposedly extracted out of Mexico and Canada today. And so if we back up for a moment, ostensibly, these tariffs were announced to combat the flow of fentanyl and illegal border crossings. And nonetheless, President Trump also said almost simultaneously that they were a purely economic measure designed to benefit American manufacturing, which has its own problems from an economics perspective, but we can leave that aside for the moment. And then now that we've had this pause, it seems as if President Trump has granted it simply for Mexico agreeing to mostly do what it had already agreed to do. And the same more or less goes for Canada.
So you don't really see what we got out of this deal, is what you're saying, for this temporary pause on the tariffs. You're saying that concessions are not really clear because President Trump is saying, hey, you know, Mexico has agreed to add 10,000 soldiers to the southern border because his concern is about fentanyl flowing into the United States. But what is your bigger concern? If these tariffs actually go into effect, what is the concern for business and produce and the American people?
Sure. The president's economic theory of tariffs is highly flawed. Tariffs are taxes. When you tax something, you get less of it. And specifically, tariffs are taxes that are paid by Americans and American consumers and businesses. If you tariff a good, then every single manufacturer who uses that good in their manufacturing process will have to pay higher input costs. And all consumers who have to pay for tariffed goods are going to be paying more at the grocery store. They're going to be paying more at the car lot. They're going to be paying higher energy prices. And if you look back at the experience that we had under Trump's tariffs that he imposed in his first administration, you'll see that on net, they cost American jobs. They took money out of Americans' pockets. They lowered GDP. They lowered employment. And really, they only benefited a very small, narrow, and politically interested section of industry.
The U.S. has had a free trade agreement with Canada and Mexico since 1994. President Trump says, hey, listen, there might be some temporary discomfort in the country, but Americans will see that this was all worth it. I assume you don't agree with that sentiment.
Unfortunately, the economic theory, the data simply do not back that assumption up. It is not going to help it will not help the American economy to make American businesses less efficient. It will not help the American economy to charge American consumers more as they're just going about their daily lives. In fact, I would add that before these tariffs were suspended, the estimates for how much they would cost the average American household, I saw ranged between about $800 and $1,200 per year per household. And that's about a quarter of what inflation since 2019 has cost your average middle class household. And in a country that is struggling with inflation, adding another $1,000 or so of higher prices to households' operating expenses is simply not an effective policy.
Yeah, you know, obviously the economy was a big factor why people went to vote this time around in the presidential election. They were worried about their pocketbooks, their grocery bills. Why do you think Americans right now should be very invested to see how this plays out?
Well, as I said, if these tariffs do actually go into place, Americans will feel them. They will feel them painfully. There's some very interesting polling that was done last year on Americans' views on tariffs, and they were somewhat squishy on tariffs, actually. They sort of thought that maybe it would be good to help American businesses out here and there, and they didn't quite understand the economics behind it. But as soon as the pollsters asked people about whether they would be fine paying more for something, an item like clothing or like cars. The respondents said no. They were happy to have tariffs as long as they thought it was costless. But once they were informed that tariffs actually do come with a whole host of costs and inefficiencies for themselves and their families, they realized that the policy wasn't worth.
Really quickly before I let you go, do you see the tariffs in all three of these countries the same? Because it looks like China's tariffs are still being imposed. Are you okay with that?
Unfortunately not. The exact same problems affect, or the exact same problems come from tariffs, no matter what country they're being imposed on. Obviously, exactly which goods we import from which countries and what quantities will affect exactly how much Americans will be harmed by new protectionism. But at the end of the day, if you're going to slap substantial tariffs on a major trading partner, American businesses, American workers, American families are all going to quite literally pay the price.
Yeah, I mean, economists will agree with you, or a lot of them do. Listen, the fentanyl crisis is a serious one in this country. Obviously, there was a crisis at the southern border, but a lot of people are saying, is this the solution? And how will this all play out will be what's going to matter to the American people. David McGarry, thank you so much for joining me tonight and for your expertise.
Thanks so much.
We'll be right back.
I'm attorney Brian McDaniel. At the Cochran Firm, getting